The August heat had finally broken by the time Marcus Webb pulled into his driveway, the sun hanging low over the hills of eastern Tennessee, and the air carrying the first hint of evening cool. His truck was loaded with groceries he couldn't quite afford, and a birthday cake he'd splurged on anyway, because his daughter was turning 8 tomorrow, and some things mattered more than the electric bill. He was halfway to the front door when he heard the sound, a rhythmic thumping coming from down the road, the unmistakable signature of a tire gone flat. He set the grocery bags on the porch and walked to the edge of his property, looking toward the source. A motorcycle was limping up the hill, its rear tires shredded, the rider fighting to keep it upright on the gravel shoulder. The bike was a Harley, old but well-maintained, and the rider was a big man in a leather vest who looked like he'd been having a very bad day. Marcus watched as the bike finally gave up the ghost about 50 yards from his driveway. The rider dismounted and stood there, hands on his hips, staring at the ruined tire like it had personally betrayed him. Common sense told Marcus to mind his own business. The man was a stranger, clearly part of some motorcycle club based on the patches covering his vest, and Marcus had learned a long time ago that getting involved in other people's problems was a good way to inherit them. He had enough problems of his own, but the man looked tired, bone-deep tired, the kind that came from more than just a long ride, and Marcus knew what that felt like. He walked down the driveway. "That tire's done," he called out as he approached. "Rim might be too, the way you were riding on it." The man turned. He was maybe 50, with a gray-streaked beard and eyes that assessed Marcus quickly. Not threatening, just careful. The look of someone who'd learned to size people up fast. "Yeah, I noticed." His voice was rough, graveled by years of wind and exhaust. "Don't suppose you know anywhere around here that fixes bikes?" "Nearest shop's in Morristown, 30 miles. Marcus looked at the sky where the light was fading fast. "They'll be closed by now anyway." The man swore under his breath. He pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, and swore again. "No signal. Welcome to Carter County. Cell coverage is more of a suggestion than a guarantee." Marcus studied the bike, then the tire, then the man. "I've got a garage, some tools. Might have a tube that'll fit if you're running tubes. Can't promise anything, but I can take a look." The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're stuck, and I'm here, and it's going to be dark in an hour." Marcus shrugged. "My daughter would say it's because I'm a soft touch. She's probably right." Something shifted in the man's expression. The wariness didn't disappear, but it softened around the edges. "Name's Leon," he said. "Leon Bridger." "Marcus Webb." He nodded toward his house, a modest two-story with a detached garage that had seen better decades. "Let's get that bike off the road before someone comes around the curve and clips it." They wheeled the Harley up the driveway together, Leon guiding the front, while Marcus supported the rear to keep weight off the destroyed tire. The garage was cluttered but organized, tools hanging on pegboard walls, a workbench covered with projects in various states of completion, the smell of oil and sawdust that Marcus had grown up with and never learned to live without. "You a mechanic?" Leon asked, looking around. "Handyman. I fix what needs fixing, cars, appliances, houses, whatever pays." Marcus cleared space on the workbench and gestured for Leon to help him lift the bike onto a makeshift stand. "Learned from my father. He could fix anything with an engine. Good skill to have. Keeps the lights on, most of the time." Marcus got to work, removing the rear wheel with practiced efficiency. The tire was beyond saving, but the rim had survived. A small mercy. He dug through bins of spare parts until he found a tube that looked like it might fit, held it up to the light to check for patches and wear. "This should work," he said. "Tire's going to be trickier. I've got an old one that might fit, but it's not ideal. Get you to Morristown in the morning at least." Leon watched him work, his arms folded, his expression unreadable. "You do this a lot. Help strangers who break down on your road?" "You're the first biker. Mostly it's locals who can't afford a real mechanic." Marcus fitted the tube into the replacement tire, his hands moving with the confidence of long practice. "Times are hard around here. Have been for a while." "Hard how?" Marcus glanced up, then back at his work. He wasn't sure why he was talking. He didn't usually talk this much, especially to strangers. But something about Leon's presence, the quiet attention in his eyes, made the words come easier than they should have. Mill closed 3 years ago. That was the main employer. Since then, it's been a slow bleed. People leaving, businesses shutting down, property values dropping. He shrugged. "I've got a daughter to raise, so leaving isn't an option. We make do." "Just you and her?" "Just us. Her mother left when Sophie was 2. Couldn't handle the small-town life, she said. Couldn't handle a lot of things. Marcus kept his voice neutral, the way he'd learned to keep it when he talked about Janine. Sophie's better off. We both are. Leon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Raising a kid alone is hard. I know something about that. You have kids? Had. A son. Leon's voice didn't change, but something in his posture did. A slight stiffening, a weight settling onto his shoulders. Lost him 6 years ago. Motorcycle accident, if you can believe it. Kid loved bikes as much as I did. Marcus stopped working. He looked at Leon, really looked at him, and saw the grief that lived beneath the weathered exterior. It was old, grief worn smooth by time, but it was still there. It would always be there. I'm sorry, he said. Yeah, me too. Leon unfolded his arms and moved closer to the workbench, watching Marcus's hands as he mounted the tire. After he died, I didn't know what to do with myself. The road was the only thing that made sense. Just riding, no destination, no plan. That's what I've been doing ever since. Running from something? Running towards something. I just don't know what yet. Leon almost smiled. Maybe I'll know when I find it. The tire went on smooth. Marcus inflated it, checked the pressure, spun the wheel to make sure it was seated properly. It wasn't perfect. The tire was older than he'd like, the tread worn in places, but it would hold. That should get you where you're going, he said. I'd take it easy on the curves, though, and get a real tire as soon as you can. What do I owe you? Marcus shook his head. Nothing. Tube was scrap, tire was taking up space. Consider it a favor. Leon's eyes narrowed again, but this time it was different. Not suspicion, something closer to confusion. Most people don't do favors for strangers. Most people haven't been stranded on the side of the road with a kid in the back seat, and no one willing to stop. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, remembering a night 5 years ago when Sophie was 3, and the truck had broken down 20 miles from home. 18 cars had passed before someone finally pulled over. Someone helped me once. I figure I'm paying it forward. The front door of the house opened and a small figure appeared on the porch. Sophie was wearing pajamas covered in cartoon rockets, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that was already coming loose. Dad, is everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just helping someone with their bike. Go back inside. I'll be there in a minute. Sophie's eyes found Leon, and she studied him with the fearless curiosity of a child who hadn't yet learned to be afraid of strangers. Cool motorcycle, she said. Leon smiled, a real smile, one that transformed his face. Thanks. It's pretty old. Old things are cool. My dad fixes old things. She looked at Marcus. Can I have a snack? Dinner's in 20 minutes. A small snack? Sophie. She sighed dramatically and retreated inside, the screen door banging shut behind her. Marcus watched her go, the corner of his mouth twitching. She's something, Leon said. She's everything. Marcus turned back to him. Look, it's getting late. I'd offer you dinner, but I've got birthday prep to do. Sophie turns 8 tomorrow. I won't keep you. Leon extended his hand. Thank you, Marcus, for the tire, and for... He stopped, searching for words, for being the kind of person who stops. Marcus shook his hand. Safe travels, Leon. I hope you find what you're looking for. Leon wheeled the bike down the driveway, mounted up, and started the engine. The sound rumbled through the evening air, familiar and somehow comforting. He raised a hand in farewell, and then he was gone, the taillights disappearing around the curve. Marcus stood in the driveway for a moment, watching the empty road. Then he went inside to make dinner and frost a birthday cake and read his daughter a story before bed. He didn't think about Leon again that night. He had no reason to. He had no idea that Leon Bridger was the sergeant-at-arms of the Hells Angels chapter out of Knoxville. He had no idea that Leon had spent the ride to his motel thinking about a single father in a cluttered garage who'd helped a stranger without asking for anything in return. He had no idea that some acts of kindness set things in motion that can't be undone. All he knew was that his daughter was turning 8 tomorrow, and he had a cake to finish decorating. The rest would take care of itself. Sophie's birthday started the way all her birthdays did, with her launching herself onto Marcus's bed at 6 a.m, announcing that she was officially 8 years old and therefore entitled to pancakes. Marcus made the pancakes. He added chocolate chips, because birthdays meant chocolate chips, and he watched his daughter eat them with the single-minded focus of a child who'd been waiting all year for this moment. She was wearing her rocket pajamas and a plastic tiara she'd gotten from a cereal box, and she looked, Marcus thought, like the best thing that had ever happened to him, which she was. "What do you want to do today?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Can we go to the lake and have a picnic? And can I swim even though you said the water's too cold?" "The water is too cold." "But it's my birthday." Marcus pretended to consider this. "Fine. But if you turn into an icicle, don't come crying to me." "You can't cry if you're an icicle, Dad. You'd be frozen." "Good point." They were clearing the breakfast dishes when Marcus heard the sound. It started as a low rumble in the distance, like thunder rolling over the mountains. But the sky was clear, not a cloud in sight, and the sound was getting louder, closer, in a way that thunder didn't. Sophie ran to the window, her eyes widening. "Dad, Dad, come look." Marcus dried his hands on a dish towel and joined her at the window. What he saw made him stop breathing. Motorcycles, dozens of them, pouring down the road like a river of chrome and leather, their engines harmonizing into a sound that shook the glass in the window frames. They turned into his driveway, and kept coming, filling the gravel space in front of his house, spilling onto the grass, lining up along the road until there was no more room. Marcus counted 20 bikes before he lost track. 30. More. "Dad?" Sophie's voice was small, uncertain. "What's happening?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Stay here." He walked to the front door and opened it, stepping onto the porch with his heart hammering against his ribs. The riders were dismounting now, removing helmets, and Marcus recognized the patches on their vests. Hell's Angels, every single one of them. And at the front of the pack, climbing off a Harley with a brand new rear tire, was Leon Bridger. Leon walked up the driveway with the easy gait of a man who'd done this before, whatever this was. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at Marcus with something that might have been a smile. "Morning." "Leon." Marcus's voice came out steadier than he felt. "What is this?" "This is the club, or part of it anyway." Leon gestured at the riders assembling behind him. "I told them about you, about what you did last night. I fixed a flat tire. You helped a stranger who didn't have any claim on your time or your kindness. That's not nothing, Marcus. Not in our world." Leon climbed the first step, then the second, until they were almost eye to eye. "I also did some asking around this morning. Talked to some folks in town." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Asking around about what?" "About you. About your situation." Leon's voice dropped, becoming something quieter and more serious. "I heard about the medical bills. Your daughter's surgery last year." The cold spread through Marcus's chest. He'd worked so hard to keep that private. The emergency appendectomy that had come without warning. The insurance that covered barely half. The debt that had been piling up ever since. He'd taken extra jobs, skipped meals, put off repairs on his truck and his house and everything else that could wait. He'd told himself he was handling it. But the bills kept coming, and the collectors had started calling. And last week he'd gotten a letter from the hospital threatening to send his account to collections, which would destroy what little credit he had left. "How did you—" "Small town. People talk." Leon held up a hand before Marcus could protest. "I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here because you helped me when you didn't have to, and we don't let that go unanswered. I don't need charity. This isn't charity. This is family taking care of family." Leon turned and gestured to the crowd behind him. "These men and women, they've all been where you are. Broke, struggling, wondering how they're going to make it to next month, and every single one of them had someone reach out a hand when they needed it most. That's what we do. That's who we are." Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to say that he didn't know these people, that he couldn't accept help from strangers, that he'd figure things out on his own the way he always had. But the words wouldn't come, because the truth was, he was tired. Tired of working 3 jobs and still falling behind. Tired of telling Sophie that they couldn't afford things when what he really meant was that he'd failed her. Tired of carrying the weight alone. "What are you offering?" he asked quietly. Leon smiled. "First, we're offering a birthday party. Your daughter's turning 8, right? We've got cake, decorations, presents, the works. Some of our guys have kids, and they know what matters." "You brought presents?" "We brought a lot of things." Leon put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Let us do this. Let us give your daughter a day she'll remember. And while she's having fun, you and I can talk about the rest." The rest. Marcus didn't know what that meant, but he was starting to understand that Leon wasn't the kind of man who did things halfway. "Dad?" He turned. Sophie was standing in the doorway, her tiara slightly askew, her eyes huge as she took in the scene in her driveway. "Are all these people here for my birthday?" Marcus looked at Leon. Leon looked at Sophie, and then he crouched down to her level, his weathered face breaking into a grin that made him look 10 years younger. "Happy birthday, Sophie. I'm Leon. Your dad helped me out last night, and my friends and I wanted to say thank you." He gestured at the crowd behind him. "We heard you like rockets." "I love rockets." "Well, we might have brought a few rocket-themed things, if that's okay with your dad." Sophie looked at Marcus with an expression of pure, desperate hope, the kind of hope that came before Christmas morning, before the first day of summer vacation, before every magical thing a child could imagine. What could he say? What could any father say? "Yeah," Marcus said. "It's okay." The next few hours were a blur of activity and noise and more happiness than the little house had seen in years. The bikers transformed the backyard into a party zone, hanging streamers and balloons, setting up tables loaded with food, inflating a bouncy castle that must have come from somewhere, but Marcus couldn't imagine where. A woman with tattoos covering both arms produced a cake shaped like a rocket ship, 3 tiers tall, with Sophie's name written in frosting across the fins. Sophie was everywhere at once, bouncing in the castle, eating cake with both hands, showing off her rocket pajamas to anyone who would look. The bikers treated her like royalty, answering her endless questions about their motorcycles, letting her sit on the seats and pretend to ride, teaching her the hand signals they used on the road. Marcus watched from the porch, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands. He'd expected to feel uncomfortable, surrounded by strangers in leather vests and patches he didn't fully understand, but there was something different about this group. They were rough around the edges, sure, scarred and tattooed and carrying themselves with the confidence of people who'd seen hard times and survived them. But they were also gentle with Sophie, patient, present in a way that surprised him. Leon found him around noon, when the party was in full swing and Sophie was leading a conga line of bikers around the bouncy castle. "She's something else," Leon said. "She's the best thing I've ever done." "I believe it." Leon leaned against the porch railing, his eyes on the celebration. "My son was like that, full of life, couldn't sit still for a minute." He paused. "I see a lot of him in her." Marcus didn't know what to say. He took a sip of cold coffee and let the silence hold. "The medical bills," Leon said eventually. "How much?" 14,000 and change. Insurance covered the surgery, but the anesthesia was out of network, and there were complications. She had to stay extra days. Marcus shook his head. "I'm making payments, but the interest keeps adding up. It's like trying to fill a hole that gets deeper the more you shovel." "What else?" "What do you mean? What else is weighing on you? The house, the truck, the work. What's the full picture?" Marcus hesitated. He wasn't used to talking about these things, not to anyone. But Leon was looking at him with those steady eyes, waiting without pressure, and something about it made the truth feel safe. "The truck needs a new transmission. That's $2,000 I don't have. The roof's got a leak over Sophie's room. I've patched it twice, but it needs proper repair. The furnace is 20 years old, and I don't know if it'll make another winter." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Some days I feel like I'm holding everything together with tape and prayers, and both are running out." Leon nodded slowly, like he'd expected all of it. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "The club's got resources. Money, sure, but more than that, skills. We've got mechanics, roofers, guys who can fix anything with an engine or a nail. We're going to take care of the bills, the truck, the roof, all of it." "Leon, I can't." "You can. Because this isn't about you, Marcus. It's about her." Leon pointed at Sophie, who was now wearing a motorcycle helmet 3 sizes too big and laughing so hard she could barely stand. "She deserves a father who isn't drowning. She deserves a house that doesn't leak. She deserves a shot at a life that isn't defined by how much you owe." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He watched his daughter, this impossible gift he'd been given, and he thought about all the nights he'd lain awake wondering how he was going to keep going, all the times he'd told himself that things would get better, that he just had to hold on a little longer. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this for us?" Leon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been grief or gratitude or some mixture of the two. "Because 6 years ago, my son broke down on a highway in North Carolina. It was raining and cold, and he'd been riding all day. A man stopped to help him, a stranger, just like you stopped for me. Changed his tire, gave him coffee, sent him on his way." Leon's jaw tightened. "That was the last act of kindness my son ever received. He died 2 days later, hit by a drunk driver on I-40. Marcus closed his eyes. I never got to thank that man, Leon continued. I don't even know his name, but I made a promise to myself that I would spend the rest of my life paying it forward. Every stranger who needs help, every person who's struggling alone, I would be the one who stops. I would be the one who reaches out. He turned to look at Marcus. You did that for me last night. You stopped when you didn't have to. Now let me do the same for you. Marcus opened his eyes. In the backyard, Sophie had organized a dance-off between two bikers, and she was judging their moves with the serious authority of an 8-year-old who knew she was in charge. Okay, Marcus said quietly. Okay. Leon nodded. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He just nodded, the way men nod when something important has been settled. Happy birthday, Sophie, he said, more to himself than to Marcus. You've got a good dad. I'm trying, Marcus said. I know. That's why we're here. The party wound down around 4 o'clock, when Sophie finally crashed on a lawn chair with a half-eaten slice of rocket cake in her hand and frosting smeared across her cheek. Marcus carried her inside and laid her on the couch, covering her with a blanket she'd had since she was a baby. She didn't stir. When he came back outside, the bikers were already cleaning up. They moved with quiet efficiency, taking down streamers, folding tables, packing away the remains of the celebration like a well-oiled machine. Marcus tried to help, but they waved him off. You've done enough, a woman named Rita told him. She was in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a braid and forearms that suggested she could probably bench press him. Let us handle this. Leon was standing by his bike, talking with a group of riders Marcus didn't recognize. When he saw Marcus approaching, he broke away and met him halfway across the yard. She have a good day? Best day of her life, probably. Marcus looked back at the house, where he could see Sophie's sleeping form through the window. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't done the hard part. Leon pulled a folded piece of paper from his vest pocket and handed it over. This is a list. Everything you told me about. The medical bills, the truck, the roof. I've got people who can handle all of it. But I need you to be straight with me. Is there anything else? Anything you didn't mention? Marcus unfolded the paper. The list was written in neat handwriting, each item numbered and annotated with names and phone numbers. It looked like a battle plan. The furnace, he said. I mentioned that. Got it covered. Hank's a licensed HVAC guy. He'll take a look tomorrow. Leon tapped the paper. What else? Marcus hesitated. There was one more thing, but it felt too personal to say out loud, too shameful. Marcus, Sophie's school. The words came out rough, reluctant. There's a field trip next month. Science Museum in Knoxville. All her friends are going, and she's been talking about it for weeks. He swallowed. It's $60. I told her we'd figure it out, but I don't know how I'm going to... Done. Leon didn't even blink. What else? That's it. That's everything. You sure? Marcus nodded. He wasn't sure. There were always more things, more bills, more problems waiting around the corner. But for now, this was everything he could think of. Everything he could bear to admit. Okay? Leon took the paper back and tucked it into his pocket. Here's what happens next. Tomorrow morning, some of the guys are going to come by with tools and materials. They're going to fix your roof, take a look at the furnace, and tow your truck to a shop we trust. The bills get paid by the end of the week. We've got a guy who handles that kind of thing, cuts through the red tape. Leon, this is too much. It's exactly enough. Leon's voice was firm but not unkind. You've been carrying this alone for too long, Marcus. You don't have to anymore. Marcus didn't know what to say. He stood there in his yard, surrounded by strangers who'd become something else, and felt the weight he'd been carrying start to shift. Not disappear. It was too heavy for that, too deeply rooted. But shift, like a load being redistributed across stronger shoulders. There's one more thing, Leon said, and this one's not negotiable. What? Sophie's birthday present. From me, personally. Leon walked to his bike and opened one of the saddlebags. He pulled out a small box wrapped in silver paper and brought it back to Marcus. Give this to her when she wakes up. Tell her it's from a friend. Marcus took the box. It was light, barely any weight at all. What is it? Something my son would have wanted her to have. Leon didn't elaborate, and Marcus didn't ask. Some things didn't need explaining. The bikers finished cleaning up and started saying their goodbyes. They shook Marcus's hand, clapped him on the shoulder, told him they'd see him tomorrow. A few of them pressed cash into his palm despite his protests, folding his fingers around the bills and refusing to take them back. By 5 o'clock, the driveway was empty except for Leon's bike. The yard looked almost normal again, as if the whole afternoon had been a dream. I should go, Leon said. Long ride back to Knoxville. You could stay. I've got a spare room. It's not much, but it's better than riding in the dark. Leon considered this. For a moment, Marcus thought he'd refuse, but then something shifted in his expression and he nodded. One night, then I've got to get back. They sat on the porch as the sun went down, drinking beers from a six-pack one of the bikers had left behind. The evening was warm, the sky turning shades of orange and pink that made the mountains look like they were on fire. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Go ahead. Your son, the one you lost. Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. What was his name? Leon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Marcus had heard it. Daniel. Danny, we called. Him. A faint smile crossed his face. He was 23 when he died, just finished trade school, was going to be an electrician, had his whole life ahead of him. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Leon took a long drink of his beer. After he died, I didn't know how to keep going. The club helped. They're good at that, at being there when everything falls apart. But it took me a long time to find a reason to get up in the morning. Did you find one? Eventually. Leon looked at Marcus. It's not complicated, really. You just decide that the world's going to be a little better because you're in it. You help where you can. You show up when people need you. And you try to honor the ones you've lost by being the kind of person they'd be proud of. Marcus thought about that. He thought about Sophie, asleep on the couch inside, about all the years stretching ahead of them, all the challenges and joys and ordinary moments that would make up their lives. Danny would have liked Sophie, Leon said. He had a soft spot for kids, always said he wanted a bunch of his own someday. She would have liked him too. She likes everyone. That's a gift. Don't let the world take it from her. The stars were coming out now, pinpricks of light scattered across the darkening sky. Marcus finished his beer and set the empty bottle aside. Thank you, he said, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but you don't have to keep saying it. Leon's voice was gentle. Just pass it on. That's all any of us can do. Sophie woke up around 7, stumbling onto the porch with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders and her tiara miraculously still in place. She climbed into Marcus's lap and leaned against his chest, still half asleep. Best birthday ever, she mumbled. Yeah? Yeah. She noticed Leon and gave him a sleepy wave. Hi, Leon. Hi, Sophie. Happy birthday. Thank you for my party. Her eyes were already closing again, and for the bouncy castle, and the cake, and everything. You're welcome, but your dad's the one who made it happen. He helped me when I needed it, and my friends wanted to say thank you. Sophie tilted her head back to look at Marcus. You helped him? I fixed his tire. That's nice. She yawned hugely. You're a good dad. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He kissed the top of her head and held her close. I'm trying, sweetheart. I'm trying. She fell back asleep in his arms, her breathing slow and even. Marcus sat on the porch with his daughter and the stranger who'd become something more, watching the stars wheel overhead, and let himself believe that maybe things were going to be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. For now, that was enough. The work began at 7 the next morning. Marcus woke to the sound of trucks pulling into his driveway, followed by voices and the clatter of ladders being unloaded. By the time he got dressed and made it outside, his yard had been transformed into a construction site. A flatbed truck was backing up to the garage, ready to tow his broken-down pickup. A crew of 4 men was already on the roof, stripping away damaged shingles. Another group was unloading lumber and tools near the back porch, where the steps had been sagging for 2 years. Leon was in the middle of it all, directing traffic like a general on a battlefield. Morning, he said when Marcus approached. Coffee's in the truck if you want some. Rita made it. Fair warning, it's strong enough to strip paint. Leon, this is... Marcus looked around, struggling to find words. I thought you said tomorrow. It is tomorrow. Yesterday was the party. Leon grinned. The boys were eager to get started. Some of them drove through the night. Sophie appeared on the porch in her rocket pajamas, her hair a tangled mess, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Dad? What's happening? Our friends are fixing some things around the house. All of them? Looks like it. She watched for a moment, processing. Then her face broke into a smile. Cool. Can I help? Before Marcus could answer, Rita appeared with a small toolbox and a pair of safety glasses sized for a child. I thought you might ask that. Come on, birthday girl. I'll teach you how to use a hammer. Sophie looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded, and she bounded off the porch with Rita, already chattering about rockets and tools and whether she could maybe possibly help with the roof. Marcus turned to Leon. Where did she get kid-sized safety glasses? Rita's got grandkids. She comes prepared. Leon handed him a cup of coffee from a thermos. Drink this. Then I'll show you what we're doing. They walked the property together, Leon explaining each project as they went. The roof was getting a full replacement, not just patches. One of the guys had connections at a supply company and got the materials at cost. The back porch was being rebuilt from the foundation up. The furnace had already been inspected by Hank, the HVAC specialist, who declared it a miracle it had lasted this long and promised to have a new one installed by end of day. The truck's going to take longer, Leon said as they watched the flatbed haul it away. Transmission's shot, like you said, but we've got a guy in Knoxville who can rebuild it. Should have it back to you in a week, maybe 2. And the bills? Handled. I talked to the hospital this morning. They're willing to settle for 60 cents on the dollar if we pay in full. Our guy's wiring the money today. Leon pulled out a folded piece of paper, a different one this time, and handed it to Marcus. This is the receipt. Everything itemized, everything documented. It's yours to keep. Marcus unfolded the paper and stared at the numbers. The total at the bottom was more than he'd made in the past 2 years, combined. More than he'd ever seen in one place. I can't. You already said that. And I already told you, this isn't charity. This is family. Leon put a hand on his shoulder. You did something good, Marcus. You helped a stranger when you didn't have to. This is what happens when good people get noticed by other good people. Marcus folded the paper carefully and put it in his pocket. He didn't trust himself to speak. The day unfolded in a blur of hammers and saws and the constant rhythm of people working together toward a common purpose. Sophie became a fixture on the job site, trailing Rita around with her miniature toolbox, asking questions about everything she saw. The workers answered her patiently, teaching her the names of tools, letting her hand them nails and screws, treating her like a colleague rather than a nuisance. Around noon, a van pulled up that Marcus didn't recognize. A woman got out, middle-aged, professional-looking, with a clipboard in her hand and a lanyard around her neck. She introduced herself as Patricia Vance, a social worker from the county. Marcus's stomach dropped. Mr. Webb? She smiled, but it was the careful smile of someone delivering news that might not be welcome. I'm not here to cause any trouble. I heard about what's happening here today, and I wanted to see it for myself. Who told you? Word travels fast in a small county, especially when a group of Hell's Angels shows up to rebuild someone's house. She looked around at the work in progress, her expression shifting from professional caution to something warmer. I've been following your file for a while, Mr. Webb. The medical debt, the housing situation, I know it's been hard. We're managing. I can see that. Better than managing, it looks like. She made a note on her clipboard. I'm going to close your file. You're clearly not in crisis anymore, and you've got a support network I couldn't have imagined. But I want you to know, she hesitated, what these people are doing for you, it's rare. Most families in your situation don't get this kind of help. Most of them just fall through the cracks. Marcus thought about all the nights he'd lain awake, terrified that someone would decide he wasn't fit to raise Sophie alone, that someone would show up and take her away because he couldn't provide what other parents provided. The fear had been a constant companion, a shadow that followed him everywhere. Thank you, he said, for closing the file. Thank them. Patricia nodded toward the workers. They're the ones who made the difference. She left a few minutes later, and Marcus stood in his driveway, watching her van disappear down the road. He felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten it was there. Leon found him there, still staring at the empty road. Everything okay? Yeah. Marcus took a breath. Yeah, I think it is. By evening, the transformation was nearly complete. The roof was finished, gleaming with new shingles that caught the fading light. The back porch was solid and level for the first time in years. The furnace was installed and humming quietly. In the basement, ready for winter. Even the yard had been cleaned up, the grass trimmed, the flower beds weeded and mulched. Sophie sat on the new porch steps, exhausted but happy, her safety glasses pushed up on her forehead like a crown. Rita sat beside her, showing her pictures on her phone of the grandchildren who owned the matching glasses. Marcus stood with Leon at the edge of the yard, watching the last of the workers pack up their tools. I don't know how to repay this, Marcus said. You don't repay it, you pass it on. Leon's voice was matter of fact, like he was stating something obvious. Someday, you'll see someone who needs help, and you'll remember today. and you'll do something. That's how it works. That simple? That simple. And that hard. Leon turned to face him. The world's full of people who need a hand, Marcus. Most of them never ask for it. Most of them are too proud or too scared or too tired to believe anyone would actually help. Your job now is to be the one who notices, the one who stops, the one who says, I see you, and I'm not going to let you carry this alone. Marcus looked at his daughter, laughing at something Rita had said. He looked at the house that had been falling apart and was now solid, whole, ready to shelter them through whatever came next. He looked at the men and women who'd given their time and skills and money to a stranger, asking nothing in return except that he'd do the same someday. Okay, he said, I can do that. I know you can. That's why we're here. Leon stayed for dinner, spaghetti that Sophie insisted on helping to make, resulting in sauce on every surface of the kitchen and a meal that tasted better than anything Marcus had cooked in years. They ate on the new porch, watching the stars come out, and Sophie told Leon about her plans to be an astronaut when she grew up. You'll need to study hard, Leon said. I know, math and science and stuff. She twirled spaghetti around her fork. Dad says I'm already good at math. Your dad's a smart man. I know. She said it with the absolute certainty of a child who had never doubted her father's wisdom. He's the best dad. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. He blinked them back and focused on his spaghetti. Later, after Sophie was in bed and the house was quiet, Leon prepared to leave. His bike was packed, his helmet in his hand, the road waiting. Thank you, Marcus said, for everything, for believing I was worth helping. You were always worth helping. You just needed someone to see it. Leon extended his hand, and Marcus shook it. Take care of that little girl, and take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. I'll try. Don't try. Do. Leon smiled. That's what my son used to say. He stole it from a movie, but it's still good advice. He mounted his bike, started the engine, and raised a hand in farewell. Marcus watched him ride down the driveway and onto the road, the sound of the engine fading into the night, until it was just a memory. He stood there for a long time, looking at the stars, thinking about everything that had changed in 48 hours. Then he went inside, checked on Sophie one more time, and went to bed. For the first time in years, he slept through the night. The seasons turned, and Carter County changed along with them. Autumn came first, painting the mountains in shades of red and gold that made the whole valley look like it was on fire. Marcus watched the leaves fall from the porch Leon's crew had built, drinking coffee in the mornings before Sophie woke up, letting the quiet settle into his bones. The furnace hummed in the basement, the roof held against the October rains, and for the first time in years, he didn't lie awake at night wondering how he'd make it through winter. The truck came back from Knoxville in mid-September, rebuilt and running better than it had in a decade. The mechanic who'd done the work refused payment. Leon squared it, he said, when Marcus tried to hand him a check, and included a note on the dashboard. Keep paying it forward. The brothers. Marcus kept the note in his wallet, folded next to the receipt Leon had given him. He looked at it sometimes when the old fears crept back, when he caught himself thinking that none of this was real, that the other shoe was about to drop. The paper was proof. The paper was a promise. Sophie went on her field trip to the Science Museum. She came home with a plastic model of the solar system, a t-shirt with a rocket on it, and a head full of facts about Jupiter's moons that she recited at dinner for the next 2 weeks. Her teacher sent a note home saying Sophie had been the most engaged student on the trip, asking questions the docents couldn't always answer, already dreaming bigger than the mountains that surrounded her. Marcus put the note on the refrigerator next to the drawing Sophie had made of their house, with all the bikers in the yard. She'd labeled each figure carefully: Dad, Leon, Rita, Hank, the nice lady with the cake. At the bottom, in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "My birthday family." The word family stuck with Marcus. He thought about it in the quiet moments, when Sophie was at school and the house was still. He thought about what it meant to have people who showed up, who cared, who gave without expecting anything in return. He'd spent so long believing he was alone, that raising Sophie was something he had to do by himself, that asking for help was weakness, that the world was divided into people who needed things and people who had things, and he would always be on the wrong side of that line. Leon had shown him a different way, not through words, though there had been plenty of those, but through action, through the simple, stubborn insistence that no one had to carry their burdens alone. The first time Marcus paid it forward was in November. He was driving home from a job, a kitchen remodel to Morristown that had taken longer than expected, when he saw a car on the side of the road. It was an old sedan, rust eating at the wheel wells, pulled over at an awkward angle with the hood up and steam rising into the cold evening air. Marcus pulled over. The driver was a young woman, maybe 22, with a baby in a car seat in the back and the kind of exhausted expression Marcus recognized from his own mirror. Her name was Denise. Her car had overheated. Her phone was dead. She'd been sitting there for almost an hour and no one had stopped. Marcus checked the radiator, added coolant from a jug he kept in his truck, and followed her to the nearest service station to make sure she got there safely. When she tried to pay him for the coolant, he shook his head. "Someone helped me once," he said. "I'm just passing it on." Denise looked at him like he'd said something in a foreign language. Then her eyes filled with tears, and she thanked him 3 times before driving away. Marcus got back in his truck and sat there for a moment, thinking about Leon, thinking about Danny, the son Leon had lost, who'd received one last kindness from a stranger before the world took him too soon, thinking about the chain that stretched backward and forward, connecting people who would never meet, holding them together across distances they couldn't see. He started the truck and drove home. Winter was hard that year, but not the way it had been before. The furnace kept the house warm. The roof kept the snow out. The truck started every morning without complaint. Marcus took on more work as word spread that he was reliable, skilled, affordable. By February, he had enough saved to buy Sophie new winter boots and still have something left over. Small things, ordinary things, but they felt like miracles to a man who'd spent years with nothing to spare. Spring brought a visitor. Marcus was in the garage fixing a lawnmower for a neighbor when he heard the familiar rumble of a motorcycle engine. He set down his wrench and walked outside, already knowing who he'd see. Leon pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. He looked the same as he had 8 months ago. Gray-streaked beard, weathered face, pale eyes that carried too much history. But there was something different, too. Something lighter. "Leon." Marcus walked toward him, hand extended. "Wasn't sure I'd see you again." "I wasn't sure either." Leon shook his hand, then pulled him into a brief, rough embrace. "But I was passing through, and I wanted to see how you were doing." "We're good. Really good." Marcus gestured at the house, at the garage, at the yard where Sophie's bicycle leaned against the fence. "Thanks to you." "Thanks to you. I just made some phone calls." They sat on the porch, the same porch where they'd sat 8 months ago, drinking coffee and watching the afternoon light play across the mountains. Leon asked about Sophie, about the business, about all the small details of a life being rebuilt one day at a time. Marcus answered, and it felt easy, like talking to an old friend instead of someone he'd known for less than a year. "I stopped for someone," Marcus said eventually. "A few months back. Young woman with a broken-down car and a baby. She'd been waiting for an hour. No one else pulled over." Leon nodded slowly. "How'd it feel?" "Felt right. Felt like..." Marcus searched for the words. "Like I was finally doing what I was supposed to be doing. Like everything that happened, all the hard stuff, it wasn't just random. It was leading somewhere. That's how it works. At least, that's how I've come to see it." Leon took a sip of his coffee. "Danny used to say that the world was a series of circles. You put something out, it comes back around. Not always in the way you expect, not always on your timeline, but it comes back." "Smart kid." "He was." Leon's voice softened. "He would have been 30 this year. Hard to believe." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. "I brought something," Leon said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, worn at the edges, slightly faded. He handed it to Marcus. The picture showed a young man standing next to a motorcycle, grinning at the camera. He had Leon's eyes, Leon's build, the same stubborn set to his jaw. He looked impossibly young, impossibly alive, frozen in a moment that would never change. "That's Danny," Leon said. "I want you to have it." "Leon, I can't. You can." Leon's voice was firm. "I've got other pictures, but I want Sophie to see this one. I want her to know about the boy who started all this, who showed me that kindness was the only thing worth chasing." He paused. "She's going to do great things, Marcus. I can feel it. And when she does, I want her to remember that it started with her father, who fixed a stranger's tire on a summer evening and didn't ask for anything in return." Marcus looked at the photograph, at the young man who'd died too soon, who'd received one last act of kindness from someone he'd never known, at the chain of moments that stretched from that highway in North Carolina to this porch in Tennessee, connecting lives across time and distance. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you." Leon stood up. "For stopping that night. For being the kind of person who stops." Sophie came home from school an hour later, bursting through the door with her backpack bouncing and a story about a science experiment that had gone slightly wrong. She stopped when she saw Leon, her face breaking into a grin. "Leon!" She ran to him and hugged him with the fierce intensity of an 8-year-old who hadn't forgotten. "Did you come back for another party?" "Not this time. Just wanted to see how you and your dad were doing." "We're great. Dad fixed the neighbor's lawnmower, and I got an A on my math test, and we have a cat now. Her name is Rocket." "A cat named Rocket?" Leon raised an eyebrow at Marcus. "She found us," Marcus said. Sophie made a compelling case. "I'm very persuasive," Sophie agreed. Leon stayed for dinner again. This time it was tacos, with significantly less mess than the spaghetti. Sophie told him about school, about her friends, about her ongoing plan to become an astronaut. Leon listened with the same patience he'd shown 8 months ago, asking questions, encouraging her dreams. After dinner, Marcus gave Sophie the photograph. He told her about Danny, about the chain of kindness that had started on a highway and led all the way to their front door. She listened with wide eyes, holding the picture carefully in both hands. "He looks nice," she said. "He was," Leon said. "He would have liked you a lot." Sophie studied the picture for a moment longer. Then she looked up at Leon with an expression that was too serious for her age. "I'm going to be like him," she said. "I'm going to help people." "I know you will." Leon's voice was rough. "I can already tell." He left the next morning, riding south toward wherever the road took him. Marcus and Sophie stood in the driveway and waved until he disappeared around the curve, the sound of his engine fading into the distance. "Dad?" Sophie said. "Yeah, sweetheart. Are we going to see him again?" Marcus thought about it, about the road that had brought Leon to their driveway, about the kindness that had connected them, about the future that stretched ahead like a highway with no end in sight. "I think so," he said. "Some people stay in your life even when they're far away." Sophie nodded, satisfied. She took his hand, and they walked back to the house together, the house that didn't leak anymore, with the porch that didn't sag and the furnace that kept them warm through the coldest nights. On the refrigerator, next to Sophie's drawing of her birthday family, Marcus hung the photograph of Danny, a reminder, a promise, a link in a chain that stretched further than any of them could see. The world was full of people who needed help. Marcus knew that now. He'd been one of them, and he would be again. Life didn't stop handing out challenges just because you'd survived a few. But he also knew something else. He knew that kindness was contagious, that helping one person helped everyone in ways you couldn't predict or measure. That the smallest act, fixing a tire, stopping on a highway, opening your door to a stranger, could set something in motion that would outlast you. Danny had known it. Leon knew it. And now, Marcus knew it too. He looked at the photograph one more time, at the young man frozen in a moment of joy, and made a silent promise. "I'll keep passing it on. For you. For Sophie. For everyone who needs someone to stop." Then he went to the garage to finish the lawnmower, and the day continued and life went on. Ordinary and extraordinary, difficult and beautiful, exactly as it was supposed to be. The chain continued, one link at a time.